Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The members of the European Parliament have voted overwhelmingly today to take action against Hungary, accusing Viktor Orban's government of a systemic threat to democracy and rule of law. It's the first time Article 7 has been triggered against a member state, just the start of a long process which could lead to Hungary's voting rights being suspended. But most British Conservative MEPs voted against the move. Fatima Manji reports.
A standing ovation for the woman who made the case against Hungary. Dutch parliamentarian Judith Sargentini accused Viktor Orban's government of posing a systematic threat to EU values. Today, more than two-thirds of MEPs overwhelmingly backed a motion to launch disciplinary action against the country. It's the first time the European Parliament has used the procedure known as Article 7, which could lead to Hungary being stripped of its voting rights. The Hungarian government reacted furiously, denouncing the vote as a witch hunt and a fraud.
Today's decision by the European Parliament is nothing more than petty revenge against Hungary by pro-immigration politicians.
Yesterday, Viktor Orban made a dramatic late entrance into the debate, a clear message that he would not be cowed by this assembly.
Hungary will not accede to this blackmailing. Hungary will protect its borders, stop illegal migration and will defend its rights.
Hungary is accused of abuse against asylum seekers and migrants. Viktor Orban's government has claimed immigration is a threat to the country's national security. It's passed the so-called Stop Soros law, which criminalises activists who help asylum seekers. The Sargentini report against Hungary also details concerns about corruption and a crackdown on press freedoms. On the newsstands in Budapest, Viktor Orban's message dominates, but the headlines haven't convinced everyone.
It would be good if the EU could somehow recognise not everyone agrees with this restrictive and almost dictatorial government.
For sure, the EU measures won't be any good for the country, but they should somehow regulate this fool.
Back in Strasbourg, many in the same right-wing coalition as Viktor Orban voted against him. But there was some support for Hungary. Nigel Farage condemned the vote, calling it authoritarian. And the majority of British Conservative MEPs voted with Mr Orban, claiming the motion was misguided and counterproductive. But if punishment against Hungary is to be taken further, all member states would have to agree, which is unlikely. The EU remains divided between those countries who want it to stand up for its core values and those who disagree.
Fatima Manji, well, earlier I spoke to Judith Sargentini, who's been leading the process to activate Article 7 against Hungary. And I began by asking her if her critics in the European Parliament were right to suggest that her report could prejudice any legal action.
If they are, they're in a minority because two-thirds of the European Parliament thinks it is the right time to take political actions towards Hungary. The European Commission has been taking legal actions year after year, but this is about something wider. This is touching everything in Hungarian society, which you cannot solve with a court case, because this is about political will.
At some point in the process, you need almost unanimous votes. Can you secure such a thing?
That's out of my hands. What I secured today, which is the first time ever, is a two-thirds majority from left to right in the European Parliament through all countries that says we cannot stand by and see how the government of Hungary is filling its personal pockets with European funding, money that should be spent on services of citizens. And that's where we are now. Let's not underestimate the signal, and let's not underestimate that it is also the European People's Party, the biggest group in the House, the Christian Democrats, of which the government of Hungary, its ruling party Fidesz, is a member, that said so too.
This is a very delicate moment because there are other far-right parties beginning to move into either coalition or actual government in other countries. Is this set to be an example to other states in the European Union or merely a Hungarian problem?
Well, this is primarily solidarity with Hungarian citizens that are deprived from equal treatment and rule of law. And I take the signal that Chancellor Kurz of Austria has given 2 days ago, that he supports the report I've written and he supports the fact that his members here in Parliament have voted for it. I take that as a very positive signal.
Are you alarmed by the fact that when you look at the two-thirds majority, those who did not support you, some of them are quite conventional, middle-of-the-road, right-wing parties?
Well, I have a different idea of what is conventional. Not supporting this report is actually not a good thing. And if we saw who applauded Viktor Orban yesterday in the European Parliament plenary when he spoke, it was the extreme right alone.
But it's the British Conservatives, some of them, who are complaining about what I raised with you at the beginning of this interview, that your report might prejudice legal action.
It's the British Conservatives that have not voted in favour of this report because Theresa May needs all the support she can get in the negotiations, and she thinks that Viktor Orban is going to give her that support. Now that's power politics, that's party politics. It has nothing to do with European values and fundamental rights, and shame on them.
Well, Downing Street has said that the Prime Minister was not consulted by Tory MEPs before the vote.
The EU might be determinedly in step over Brexit negotiations, with Michel Barnier whipping the 27 countries in. But the EU Parliament has slapped down one of its own today, and hard. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban faced unprecedented censure from the EU when almost 450 MEPs lined up and voted against Budapest over possible breaches of bloc rules and values, including hampering press and academic freedoms and denying rights to minorities and migrants. And for good measure, Angela Merkel and Jean-Claude Juncker also weighed in, warning against growing nationalism. So with Viktor Orban at the helm, our diplomatic editor Mark Urban is here. How serious a challenge is this to Hungary's behaviour, do you think?
Well, to the EU's existence, in a sense, I think is the interesting question. I mean, there's plenty of people in Brussels who think the behaviour of some countries, Hungary, Poland, and maybe one or two others, is more of a threat to the future of the organisation than Brexit, for example. I mean, the real issues, as you spelt them out, were summed up in a dossier presented to the Parliament by this Dutch Green MEP, Judith Sargentini, who compiled this whole thing for them to vote on as a systemic threat to the values of the EU. Now, the key thing, of course, is that Hungary doesn't want to leave. Neither does Poland. Neither do some of the other countries where, for example, in Italy, you've got the Lega saying they want to maybe question the future in the euro. They don't say they want to leave the EU. All of these countries getting together want to make big changes. Now, reacting to what happened, Ms. Sargentini this afternoon pointed out that we've been here before with Poland.
You might want to know what the next steps are. That is questionable. As you know, that when Commissioner Timmermans started the Article 7 procedure towards Poland in November 2017, there was no timeline for the Council to respond. So again here, I'm at the stage where Commissioner Timmermans was in November 2017. There is no timeline.
So what happens now? I mean, Viktor Orban is here for the second time round. What's he going to do?
OK, well, Article 7 procedures that she spoke about there ultimately can lead to a country being suspended effectively, losing its voting rights. That's what Viktor Orban was there arguing against in the European Parliament yesterday. But as we saw with Poland, it didn't happen. Now, actually, Viktor Orban threatened essentially to get the Poles out of the situation when it occurred before. The situation now is that all but the country concerned have to agree to suspend under Article 7, to suspend a member. And he said, I'll bail you out, Poland, if they try and do this to you. And presumably there would be a reciprocal move from Poland if they now try to do this to Hungary. So as Ms. Sargentini implied there, they're deadlocked. And that's the real issue for those who believe that behaviour by, for example, Hungarian government, Polish government, is a threat to the core values of the EU. There isn't really a way to apply this sanction.
Mark, thanks very much indeed.
I've been getting